Hello and welcome to Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy. I'm your host Leo, and this week we are doing something a little bit different, and we're dipping our toes into the world of romance with That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. So, why? Honestly, I got hooked by the cover as well as the title. It's a very fun title, and it's actually part of a series called Mead Mishaps that is a trilogy, at least so far, that includes the books That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf, and That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human. So, yes, this book came out in 2021, though I only discovered it very recently, and I found it very interesting. You know, I decided this would be my opportunity to dip my toe into romance novels to see what they're about. Because honestly, I haven't read a pure romance novel before. They're not exactly targeted at me. So, fair enough. But I was interested by the premise overall and decided to give it a chance, give it a go, see how it is. And overall, I'm willing to say it's actually a pretty good book. Pretty interesting. But with that said, yeah, there's not a whole lot of history to go into because I was literally just walking through the bookstore and I saw the book title and I was like, well, that sounds funny. It wasn't in the dedicated romance section. It was actually in the fantasy section, as this is a fantasy novel as well. It kind of has multiple classifications that you can follow through. It is a fantasy romance adventure. You know, it kind of narrows down as it goes along. But yeah, it's a fun book. So the basic plot is we follow the character of Cinnamon. She is a spice trader, and yes, the character names in this a lot of the time are puns, and that is one of the negatives, I'll say. It's not too egregious, but it gets there a little bit. You know, Cinnamon, who is a spice farmer and trader, and her friend Bree, who is a cheese seller, and whatnot. It's silly. Her brothers' names are Cumin and Chili. She had a sister named Cherry, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, so the names are a bit silly. The book opens on a festival. She is getting hammered because it is the time of choosing, I believe is what it's called, or something like that. Basically, it is when the goddess Maeva chooses her champions to go close Volstagg Gate, which opens every 15 years or so for some reason. So the reason that she's getting absolutely hammered is because she wasn't chosen. And she has spent her, past few years, a good chunk of her life, trying to stay relatively hidden. Because she absolutely did not want to be chosen. But now that the hero from this village has been chosen, she's free. She can do whatever she wants. So she dyes her hair and gets absolutely sloshed. And she has a peculiar thing that whenever she gets super drunk, she gets a big old hankering for cheese. So she goes visits her cheese friend and starts eating some cheese. There's a bit of a disturbance out in the direction of her farm, but they kind of put that off into the back of their mind. And she starts wandering her way home as she is, again, quite hammered. So she goes home, and on her way home, she gets robbed. But she's very easily able to identify who her attacker is, so is able to use that to turn the situation around on him and starts chasing him around the woods. When she gets a little bit turned around and ends up following a different noise, which leads her to finding someone who got trapped in a bit of a landslide thing. There's a bunch of rocks scattered around the ground, but luckily the guy's just trapped under some branches, so she helps move the branches. He's like, thank you, but you might want to run. And she's like, why? He's like, because I don't want to end up killing the person who saved me. And then the chase is on. She runs back home, which was relatively close, and runs through the cinnamon field of her family farm. As she gets to the door, he catches up, and she beats him with a stick of cinnamon that was just kind of lying around, and is able to get inside the house and barricades herself in. So on this family plot, there are 4 houses, supposedly, because each of the kids has their own house, and then there's the parents' house. and she went to her parents' house because it was the closest one, because hers just so happened to be on the other side of the farm. But yes, so she barricades herself in, and morning comes, and she tries to give an explanation of what happened. They're all worried, and they think that she should go to the nearby temple to pray for protection from the goddess. But before she's able to even, think about actually going and doing that, as her family's asking for a description of the person who attacked her, he just appears at their window and is like, "Hey, it's me. Sorry." Then he comes in and is like, "Yeah, I need your help destroying a cup, because it turns out that the god that they worship, Maeva, is actually not a god. She's a lich who has tricked humanity into protecting her for like the past 500 years or so." And so, and the reason that demons, as they're called in this, which is just pretty much the blanket term for all like monster-esque creatures, so you got your orcs, your werewolves, your vampires, your dragons, etc. They're all blanket termed under demons. So we set off on an adventure to go destroy the cup, and Cinnamon agrees because the demon, whose name is Fallon, pretty much threatens her entire family. So she agrees on that basis, and so they mosey on away to get the cup broken. They're able to do it with relative ease. So the reason that he needs Cinnamon's help is because if he tries to approach the cup, the curse that it has kind of affected demons takes over the closer he gets to the cup, based off of some kind of protection magic. And even with the cinnamon, which it turns out is able to kind of cancel out the curse, the closer he gets, its effectiveness reduces. So he can't get close enough. So he needs her, because it doesn't affect her, to go in there and destroy it for him. And again, it's met with some resistance, as it's shown to be true, because this is also his opportunity to prove that the goddess is actually a lich, by giving Cinnamon a necklace that he was using, and it kind of reveals their true form. And so he tells her that all she has to do is go up to the temple, throw it in, and all will be revealed. And it works. She goes in, throws the thing, and a goo starts bubbling from the cup. So she goes to destroy it after being attacked by like a zombie orc thing that Fallon fights off, and success. The cup gets destroyed. The temple thing, which is kind of more like a small cave, collapses, and mission done. And she says, "Okay, well, good luck with the other three, and I'm going home." And Fallon's like, "I'm sorry, what?" And she's like, "Yeah, the other ones, this was the southern one. There's the north, east, and west one as well." And at that, he throws a little bit of a tantrum, and then he pretty much asks her for help in a very roundabout way. It's one of those kinds of conversations where, like, both know where it's going. She said, like, while grumbling, she says, "But you said that this is all I had to do and my family would be safe." And he's like, "Yeah, your family's safe, but your friends or yourself, not so much." So he pretty much kind of doubles down on the threat a little bit. So they pack up to get ready to go on an adventure. Now, the overall adventure is relatively short. The longest part of the adventure is pretty much going from the first town to the second town, and then the last two kind of get wrapped up pretty fast. So, keeping things relatively clean, because this is a romance novel, so there's a lot of sexual stuff in it, though I do highly respect this novel for being quite restrained. Nothing, like, fully happens until just past the halfway point of the book. And then even then, they don't fully go all the way until near the end of the book, like around page 200 or so. So, yeah, I found that very interesting. But, yeah, this book is actually really short. It's only 260 pages. It comes with a little map, which is fun. The map frustrates me so, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But anywho, they go to the nearby town of Wandermere, and in Wandermere is where the next cup is. They settle in at an inn, and they also find that Wandermere has a bit of a reputation that wasn't shared with Cinnamon, because Cinnamon stayed in her hometown of Bouvale, which, frustrating thing about map number 1, is not marked on the map. So there's that. 2, there is a slavery problem in this town. So an order of mages has somehow found a way to control demons. Now, because of Maeva's spell, her curse, demons are reduced to kind of feral beasts, as they are not able to communicate or anything, as they're kind of led through just kind of pure rage. And so when the cups are destroyed, that curse is lifted and they're able to more have more control over their facilities. But something that is happening in Wandermire is that the demons are being skinned and their skins are being sold off. So while Fallon and their new friend Usha kind of go set up the things, they met Usha. She was the proprietor of an inn, and that's where she found out that demons actually aren't, bad inherently, and also they are sentient beings who are being kind of controlled. So she agrees to help them, break down the system. So she takes Fallon in the cart that Cinnamon brought to go sell spices near the mage's place, which is where the cup's being held. Cinnamon goes to find a mock cup. Basically, the idea is that they trade the cup out with a fake, take the cup outside, dispose of it cleanly, and all will be good. It doesn't go quite so smooth, but it kind of works that way. So after she gets the cup, she's wandering around, and she comes across a store owner beating a werewolf, trying to get him to transform so that he can harvest the skin of the werewolf, the pelt of the werewolf. So she intervenes and buys the werewolf from him, claiming that, hey, you've already damaged the potential pelt as it is, so you might as well just sell him to me, and you'll make some kind of money. To which he agrees and throws in a Lamia as well, which is a snake person. And so she saves 2 of them by, booping them with some cinnamon to kind of wake them up, and takes them with her to the mission. Takes them on the mission with her. So she goes in, replaces the cup, but the cup starts bubbling like it did before. And so she tries to, thinking on the fly, get the mages to fight on her side to help defeat the thing guarding the cup. Doesn't fully work, and this is where we get the big revelation that Fallon is a dragon. So he starts to go on a bit of a rampage because Cinnamon gets hurt destroying the cup. It succeeds, and he goes on a rampage killing a bunch of mages and burning down the town of Wandermire. So she has to wander back into the town to try to calm him down before he completely levels it down. And this is where they have their first intimate encounter, where they set up a bit of a system. Well, they had already set up a bit of a system prior outside of Wandermire, but yeah, it's at this point that system starts to break down a little, and they don't go all the way, and this is just past the halfway point of the book, by the way. They get a bit intimate, but don't go all the way, as he wants her to, be fully committed to like an actual relationship and whatnot. And he isn't sure if she's ready. While she is wanting, he doesn't know if she's ready. So they move on. They steal a ship because they can't, continue to hang around Wandermire. And become pirates for a bit. While they're pirating around, this is where she comes to the realization that she is indeed in love with him. And, after she has a bit of a hangover and gathers a bunch of cheese and declares herself the cheese queen, they come to the realization that, yes, she loves him and whatnot, but he decides he wants to get a little bit of payback to have her experience. Like, he bites and infuses her with a bit of his magic, which is the equivalent of them getting married, essentially. Although this isn't explained until a little bit later. In infusing her with the magic, she is overcome with lust. And he explained it earlier in the book, stating that if he were to do this, she would be overcome with so much lust that they would pretty much be stuck in bed for like a week and whatnot. But he actually puts her off after doing this because, one, they're going into a pirate battle, trying to take over a cargo ship because pirate stuff. And two, because he wants her to understand how he has felt this entire time since they met. And she's frustrated but accepts it, and it turns out that the cargo ship that they were attacking was a trap, and there's another dragon on that ship, and it turns out that the third cup has been woven into his hair. So in the epic battle, Cinnamon's able to destroy the cup, and they crash land on an island, where they finally do go all the way. They're rescued by their friends, and they have to journey off as fast as they can to Volstagg Gate to finish off the story. They do so, where they finally come across the heroes' party, which either just moseyed their way along towards the gate, or they were given so much OP power that they, barely had to break a sweat getting to the gate. It's not fully explained. They try to have a conversation with the heroes' party, stating like, hey, Maeva's a lich. They don't believe. And, they try to give Cinnamon an ultimatum of, you wouldn't kill your own, being humans. But she says, you're right, I won't kill my own people, and then shoots the humans because she's, bonded with the demons all this time. Though there's some dubious-ish health, I guess, in this period of time that I'll get to later. But using that as a distraction, they were able to rush in, have the final showdown with Maeva, kill her, and then there's a smaller, minor confrontation with the heroes' party, but two of them have seen Maeva for what she is, while the other two, one's injured and the other one didn't see it, so he believes that they're just lying and tries to attack Cinnamon, at which point he gets absolutely, he was no threat to her, but Fallon panicked and killed him, and was about to kill the rest of the heroes' party, but Cinnamon stood in front of them and said no. So he grabs Cinnamon and flies away back to the island, because she stated on their journey from island to Volstagg Gate that she wanted to spend a whole month on that island, because she really enjoyed the island itself, because it was very pretty, calming, and beautiful, and wanted to spend time just there. But, yeah. So he takes her there, and she's out for a few days. Now, he used magic to put her to sleep, is what it's implying, I believe. And he kept her asleep for a few days, at which point she asks if he went back and killed the heroes' party, all except for the one person. And he says, no. And then she asks, then why did you keep me asleep? And he was like, well, because I was worried that you were going to be mad at me. So he tried to soften the blow of her potentially being mad at him by... He used magic to build them a beach house on the island and whatnot. And basically, he, in his panic, has made it to where he wanted to keep her on the island forever. But she says, yeah, I don't want that. We're going to have to leave eventually. And he's like, I'm not saying forever, but until you're able to get a grasp of the magic and whatnot. And she's like, but you said that could be years. So in the end, she convinces him to create a magic form of protection, like what Maeva was doing to protect her phylacteries, and, make it to where it would work against humans and whatnot. At which point he concedes and is like, yeah, but it'll take me a couple of months to do. And she's like, I'm fine with an extended honeymoon, etc. But yeah. So then they hang out on the beach, and then eventually they go home. That's the end of the book, where she tells her parents that, hey, I'm married, I defeated a goddess, and I'm home, essentially. Now, that is the end of the book. It wraps up very fast. Because like I said, they don't destroy the second chalice until about halfway through the book. And then the third and the fourth one come very fast, one after the other, as they come up with the plans and whatnot to do it. Yeah, I mean, overall, it's a very simple story if you're looking for like a simple fantasy thing. It's a pretty good romance overall. I was worried at first because of some of the phrasing and whatnot just didn't quite settle right with me at times. But overall, I think it came together in the end and was pretty good. Now, this is a semi-anthology series, as a lot of romance series tend to be, where each book follows a different set of characters, though it is all set within the same like universe and same area most of the time. Basically, most of the characters that you'll encounter through the rest of the books are brought up in the first book. So, and this is kind of, it was me guessing, though it seems that I was proven correct, and that is that the main romance interests were introduced in this book, that being the werewolf that gets the potion yeeted at him in the second book, as well as, according to the description of the third book, the other dragon. So the other dragon that's introduced in this book is the romantic interest in the third book. Now, it gets a little bit confusing, as the main character of the second book is Bree. So that one's fine. Although I did take a peek into the second book because I did buy it. I haven't bought the third one yet, but I need to. That way I have them all and I can read them all and, finish this series. Because I don't know if there's going to be a fourth one. But that's fine. Although the second book does decide to do a split perspective, which is a big change, as this one follows Cinnamon from beginning to end. The next book is going with a split perspective, following Bree and Felix, who is the werewolf. And the third book, the human that gets saved, supposedly, is Cherry, Cinnamon's sister who supposedly died. Now, that plotline does not technically fully get resolved in this book. As far as this book's concerned, Cherry is still dead. And we are actually kind of told how she died and kind of shown what the creature that actually did it. So when Cinnamon was younger, so Cinnamon, Bree, and Cherry were quite adventurous and whatnot, and they loved adventure novels and etc., etc. They would go out exploring, and Cherry ended up getting out a bit too far ahead and was grabbed from out in front of them by like a bony, weird hand thing that pulled her under the water. And so Cherry's grave remains empty because they weren't able to recover her body. So, that when you hear something like that, especially in these kinds of books, you immediately go, she's probably alive, right? Then later, as they're on their way from Buhale to Wandermere, as they're getting quite close to Wandermere, she is sleeping and wakes up in a bit of a cold mist and hears someone calling out to her in a familiar voice, but she's not able to place it until she gets close enough and sees that it's her sister Cherry. And she goes to get her sister, but it turns out that it's actually this like weird ghost dog thing that can create illusions with its tail hand thing. And it uses that to, like, when you get close, grab you. And so it does grab Cinnamon, brings her down, and Fallon kills it and whatnot. And so we're kind of shown that, this is a little bit of a spiritual wrap-up to that plot line, as the creature that killed her sister is now dead. But, yeah, so she's going to come back at some point. I don't know if it's going to be that it just happens in the third book, or if it's part of the plot of the second book, but it definitely did not happen in this book. I'll find out eventually when I get around to those books. In the meantime, I am going to move on to a different series for a bit, and then I'll come back, read the sequel to this, and then I'll get the third book eventually. So, yes. That's something to look forward to, technically. So, let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that annoyed me about, like, the plot progression and the map. So, the map, it shows you, like, all of the kind of important things, including like the country lines and whatnot, but the implication is that two of the cups are in the same town, like in the same country, and they're relatively close to each other, because Wandermere is in the southeast of the continent that they're on, and that is technically the East Cup. And after they leave Wandermere, all of their plans, which was to go to, like, I think some kind of pirate place, like a pirate haven to kind of unload and, like, restock and whatnot, and then go to Kirkwall, and then go back around and go to Ubin's Eye, where the last cup is supposed to be. All of that gets scrapped very fast. Like, on their way to the pirate place is when they try to attack the cargo ship, come across the third cup, which is supposedly the Kirkwall Cup, although it's never fully explained that it was the Kirkwall Cup. They just assume that she's hanging out at Ubin's Eye. But yeah, so they head there directly and just wrap up the book. So there's a ton of locations on here that are listed, which is nice for like future reference, maybe for like the next book, who knows, but aren't used at all. And I find it a little bit silly. But hey, heck, a lot of things aren't even mentioned. So that's something that kind of annoyed me, chalice placement wise, as well as just the general map. And again, the starting location of Buhale isn't marked. Now, I understand it's like a really small village, which then also begs the question of, why is there a chalice there? It's a very small village. Why would you put the fewest humans you can to defend it? It's a bit silly. But I digress. That's just, things. You generally in adventure stories or fantasy stories want to start small scale and then have them blow up into the rest of the story. Now, some things I did quite enjoy. One, she absolutely did not want to go on an adventure. As mentioned, she spent a good chunk of her life, being quite demure as she was hiding herself away so that she wouldn't get picked. But of course she's then thrust into an adventure where she's kind of the bad guy of a different adventuring party story, which is kind of funny. Yeah, I think overall it's quite good. The book gets really good near the end, where it just starts becoming quite funny, as just silly things start happening during kind of inappropriate times. I'll leave those for you guys to discover if you choose to read this. And I do highly recommend that if you're interested in dipping your toes into romance, and you haven't before, or if you have and you just want a bit of a silly fantasy story to read, I highly recommend it. Though some warnings, again, it is a romance novel, so there's explicit stuff throughout the book in different ways, and it actually does have a content warning at the beginning, so I'll go ahead and read that out so that you can be a little bit more aware before you decide whether or not you want to make a purchase. So it says, please be aware this book contains light BDSM, dubcon, violence, mentions of sexual violence, no rape or sexual assault occur, it is mentioned in conversation, and sexually explicit content that could trigger certain audiences. Now, for those who don't know, dubcon is dubious consent, so I guess it's technically dubcon, but it's dubious consent, meaning that it's questionable whether or not there's actual consent, but generally there is consent. In fact, for the sequel, there's also dubious consent, and it specifically states what said dubiousness is, and it is that there's a love potion to where you're kind of questioning whether or not they are actually consenting and whatnot, or because they're technically under the influence and whatnot. So anyway, so that's the content warning and whatnot. So yeah, I do recommend it. It is pretty good, and I do look forward to reading the next book, although I am spacing out when I read them. But anyway, with that said, I think that's it. Next week is questionable as to what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do the Fallout TV series, because I've been wanting to watch it, and I think that this is probably the best opportunity to just do it. So I'll do the Fallout TV series next week, and we'll have a good old time talking about that. And after that, I'm not entirely sure what I plan on doing. Who knows? Big old question marks all around. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, feel free to like, comment, subscribe if you're on YouTube, or rate and review and share it with your friends on any podcast catcher of your choice. As well as, if you guys are interested in hearing me talk about, certain video game stuff and whatnot, as I'm doing the challenge over on RPG Hangout. This past week, I did Minecraft Dungeons and Minecraft Legends. They're okay. They're perfectly fine. And this coming up week, I am doing Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Then after that, I am going to try and do Wild Arms. So, good stuff coming up on RPG Hangout. Well, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is questionable for me, and I'll get into that when that episode comes out. But yeah, anywho, lots of things. With that said, though, thank you guys so much for listening. I will talk to you guys next week. Goodbye.